Vayomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetecha mibeis avicha. God says to Avram, go thee from your land and from your birthplace and from your father's house, El ha'aretz asher ereka, to the land which I will show you. And this actually is related to something that we touched upon today in our Kuzari shir, but you'll see in just a moment if you can make the connection. Lech Lecha. What does Rashi say? What is Rashi bothered with? Lech Lecha. Should have just said Lech. Lech me'artzecha. Leave your land. Go away from your land. But Lech Lecha, what does that teach me? Lahana'asecha u'letovasecha. For your benefit. For your future goodness. V'shame escha legoy gadol, and that's where I'll make you into a great nation. V'kani atazoch rabanim, and you're not going to be able to have children here. So if you want to be able to realize the greater good for yourself, for your future, you're going to have to go to Eretz Yisrael. V'od she'odiati v'acha ba'olam, and furthermore, God says, by going to Eretz Yisrael, I will be able to publicize what you're all about to the entire world. I'll be able to publicize your creed to the entire world. So really what Rashi is explaining is Lecha means go for your sake. Don't do it for me, says Hashem. Go for your sake. Look at all the benefit that you're going to get out of going to Eretz Yisrael. Number one, you're going to become a great nation. You'll be able to have children here. And number two, you're going to be able to spread forth your message to the entire world if you go to this place called the land of Canaan. Okay. Now, the Alshich elaborates on this point of Lech Lecha, and he takes a slightly different approach from Rashi as to what Lech Lecha means. And in order for us to get to that point, let's just read a few lines from the beginning of the Alshich. He says, Boha Elokim lelamed la'adam da'as u'laha'amidas Avram al ha'emes. What God is doing over here is trying to teach man, the reader, a lesson and to try to show Avram what truth is. V'yorehu v'yomar lo al ha'echas lech lecha. So the first thing God tells Avram is go for yourself. Lomar ata da'lecha ki eincha bechutz la'aretz masha ata ba'aretz. You're not the same person outside of Eretz Yisrael as you are inside of Eretz Yisrael. And sometimes you have to realize that you have to change location in order to become the person that you need to become. So now the Alshich explains that what is this all about? He says that Od Yadanu, I'm skipping a whole bunch of stuff, Od Yadanu mechachmei ha'emes ki ein davar ruchani kadosh holech mimakom lemakom sheya'atik v'ya'aker legamre mimakom shehayabo. When something that is a spiritual entity, there can be no spatial displacement of a spiritual entity. A spiritual entity doesn't go from point A to point B. A spiritual entity always remains connected to its source. Ke'im shesham yishaer ikar shorsho, u'mimitziuto mitpashet veholech el makom hachefetz. That really what happens is that a spiritual entity always remains connected to its source of spiritual strength, and then it moves and stretches out to where it needs to go. And so basically, we won't go into all of the esoteric discussion that the Alshich engages in over here, but basically what he's saying is like this. A human being, especially a Jewish neshama, is always connected to Hashem. But there are many factors that can create a blockage between our connection to Hashem. Sometimes when you're in an airspace that has impurity and is the antithesis of holiness, even though I'm tethered to God, there can be blockage that's nevertheless created. In order for you, Avram, to realize that connection that you naturally have with Hashem, you have to go to an airspace which is unpolluted, where that blockage is not present. You need to go to a place where you can realize that spiritual connection that really is very strong between you and me, but which you can't realize right now because of all the blockage, that's the pollution that's in the air, that's preventing you to sort of realize what strong connection you and I have. When we learn the Kuzari further in the second Ma'amar, we're going to see more about this idea that Rabbi Yehuda Levi emphasizes as well. The only place in the world where a human being can accomplish prophecy is in Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because that's the place where there's no pollution. It's the place of the closest receptors to God's essence or God's presence is. And it's in the same vein that the Alshich says, and I don't have it printed for you here, but one of the questions that the Alshich asks is that normally, and we'll see in further stories of God's appearance to Avram, normally it says, Vayera elav Hashem el Avram, or Vayera Hashem el Avram, that God appears to Avram, Vayomer lo, and says to him. Here we don't find the Torah saying in this very first prophecy, this very first command to Avram, Vayera elav, or Vayera Hashem el Avram, Vayomer lo, Lech Lecha me'artzecha. It doesn't say that God appears to Avram and gives him the command, get thee from thy land, but rather just a straight Vayomer Hashem el Avram Lech Lecha. God says to Avram. And the Alshich explains this, it's precisely because this is not a place of prophecy. Avram is not getting a prophetic message. Avram is hearing a voice, but this is not a prophetic voice. How he hears it, I can't tell you precisely. But he's not hearing it through prophecy, because he's not in Eretz Yisrael. And the very first place that Avram is able to actually receive prophecy is only when he's in Eretz Yisrael, because he's then able to connect to Hashem in a much more direct way. Now, we've discussed this question before. One of the reasons that the Meforshim say why it doesn't say that God appeared to Avram in a more direct fashion is because they wanted that, it also, there are a number of things that it doesn't say at the beginning of this parsha. It doesn't say that Ela toldos Avram ish tzadik haya b'doros of Esau Elokim yisalech Avram. Like it says in Parshas Noach. It doesn't say that, Noah, Avram was a righteous man who walked with God, and as a result, God said to Avram, get thee and go to the land of Canaan, which would have been an appropriate preface, especially if that's the preface for Parshas Noach. Why isn't that the preface for the father of the Jewish people? That God sees that Avram is a righteous man. So there's a lot missing from this text. Some Meforshim explain that it's precisely missing because God doesn't want to give the false impression that he chose us because of our righteousness. He chose us because he chose us. End of story. Which makes his choosing of us irrevocable and not contingent upon our behavior. And that's what the Maharal points out. But also, you see the other point that the Alshich is trying to make is that you're dealing with an undeveloped person. You're dealing with a person who has yet to realize his destiny. He has yet to come to the promised land, and sometimes you can only realize your destiny in one particular place in the world. And so therefore, if you look at the last paragraph that I have copied for you, he says, V'navo el ha'inyan. So let's get to the bottom line, he says. Ki halo ze'ema amaro yisbarach el Avraham avdo. That's really what God was saying to Avram. Al ya'aleh al ruchacha. Ki mahusacha b'chutz la'aretz u'mahusacha ba'aretz echasi. Don't falsely think that you're the same person outside of Israel as you are inside, because after all, I am who I am. What difference does it make where I am? It shouldn't make a difference. I'm the same person, whether I live in Ur Kasdim, whether I live in Canaan. Ki haloda ki bihiyosecha b'chutz la'aretz einacha davek im shorshecha ve'eincha be'etzem shalem. He says, because when you're outside of the land, you're not able to truly and properly attach yourself to your spiritual root, and therefore you're not really complete. Ki im ki ilu nifrad kitzatcha mi kitzatcha. It's as if you're disconnected from yourself. Because you're actually separated. You're disconnected from your source, from your spiritual root. The Avram that's connected to me, that I see in heaven, is not the Avram that you are, that you think you are when you look in the mirror. You're a disconnected person. There's two parts of you. And we need to put that all together, make you whole again. He says, Ach belechtecha el haaretz ata keholech umitchaber al atzmecha v'shorshecha. But when you go to the land of Canaan, you'll be able to reconnect to your source, to your root. V'zehu Lech Lecha. So that's what Lech Lecha means for the Alshich. Not go for your sake, not to go for your interests, but rather Shehu ki lech ula atzmecha ata holech, hu hashoresh hadavek belokecha. go to yourself. Lech Lecha means go back to yourself, find yourself, connect to yourself. The only place where you'll be able to truly connect to who you really are, and to the greatness that you are destined to achieve in this world, is only to be able to go back to yourself and reconnect to who you really are, to your true essence. Ki eichutcha mit'aleh u'mitkadesh u'mishtalem bazeh. Because your very essence elevates and is sanctified and becomes whole only there. Hinei ki ein atzmutcha b'chutz la'aretz ka'atzmutcha ba'aretz. And therefore you see that your very essence of who you are as a human being, as a complete spiritual being, is not the same, independent of place. And I think that, this is, of course, the metaphysical discussion of the qualities of Eretz Yisrael, especially for the Jewish neshama. And that in itself is a very important discussion. The important discussion being is that we have to remember that if we want to realize our fullest potential spiritually, we can, as far as doing mitzvahs and as far as serving Hashem, we really can only do that in Eretz Yisrael. And that applies today as much as it applied to the very first Jew, Avraham Avinu. Here we're doing great work. In Eretz Yisrael, we can do even greater and really complete ourselves as spiritual beings. But I think the larger message is that sometimes there's a calling to every single person, which is go to yourself. Sometimes people are frustrated. Sometimes people are unhappy with their station in life because they know that I am not where I'm supposed to be. I'm disconnected from who I really am. There's something that's holding me back. And there could be certain situations in life that don't allow me to go to where I need to be, or to go to reconnect to who I really am. Whether I have some latent talent that I've never been able to realize, whether I really needed to get that degree that I needed to in order to be able to succeed in a certain area and I never was able to do it. There could be a number of different, everyone's got a unique story of if only. If only I was able to do X, Y, and Z, I would have been able to connect with myself. So the message is, don't give up on yourself. Sometimes God is saying to you, Lech Lecha, go find yourself, go reconnect to yourself. It's never too late. And that's one of the messages that I think you have to take out of Lech Lecha. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that I think there's also another message here as well. And that is that, we have this concept in the Gemara that Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba bitrunya im briosa. The Almighty does not try and pick fights with His creations, which means that even when Hashem gives you specific challenges in life, He does it compassionately. Hashem is not going to try and make life deliberately difficult when He can make it easy for you. So one of the messages of Lech Lecha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to tell to Avram is, Avram, I would never tell you to do something if it wasn't for your own good. Can you imagine yourself saying that to one of your children? Clean up your room, do your chores, do your homework, but remember, my beautiful son or daughter, I would never tell you to do this if it wasn't for your own good. You'd have to do this because I love you. Because you're going to become a better person by doing these things. And that's specifically what Hashem is trying to tell to Avram. It's the lesson of what basic Jewish parenting is all about, which is be firm, be tough with your children, be demanding, but at the same time make sure that they know that it's coming from a place of love, that you're doing it for them, and not so that you can be gratified in the process. Hashem says, you're not doing this for me. You're doing this for you. It's going to be difficult. It requires you sometimes to displace yourself completely and make tough decisions in life. But realize that any time Hashem asks us to do things, it's like a loving parent asking us to do these things. It's lahana ascha. It's for your sake. And the stations and the situations that Hashem places us in life, we have to have that bitachon. We have to trust Hashem that He places us in these positions and situations in life because it's lahanascha l'tovascha. It's really for our own good. We may not realize it at the time. When Avram was told by Hashem, leave your family, leave everything behind, don't give us another consideration to your culture and to your people, and just pick yourself up and go to some foreign place. It may have been difficult, but Hashem says, trust me, it's for your own good. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.